Hey everybody, I wanted to come back and do another video on tariffs, rather a retake on the first video that I did on tariffs, because I realized after the fact that I had left out some pretty pertinent information that just kind of opened the door to questions that I could have answered in the video had I just given a bit of back history on tariffs, when they were imposed, how long they've been in place, and the impact that they've had on American businesses since they were imposed. So with all that being said, let's dive right in and talk about Trump's tariffs. I'm sure most of you remember that Trump was, in fact, our president before, from 2016 to 2020. Well, during his first term was when the tariffs were actually put in place. And they've been there ever since then. The Biden administration never got rid of them. Why would they? It's a great way for the government to collect an additional revenue stream and, fund the U.S. Treasury and their agenda. So I'm going to actually break down that timeline for you. I'm going to show you when these Trump tariffs actually went into place, how long they've been in place, the timeline of the tariffs, and the overall impact it's had on American businesses since they've been in place. Okay, so rewind the clock to March 22nd, 2018. On this day, President Trump signed a memorandum that directed the U.S. Trade Representative to take action against China's unfair trade practices. This was based on an investigation under Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974, which concluded that China was involved in intellectual property theft and forced technology transfers from U.S. companies. The very next month, April 3rd, 2018, the USTR released a proposed listing targeting approximately $50 billion worth of Chinese imports with a 25% tariff. This list focused on products related to aerospace, information, and communication technology, robotics, and machinery. A few months later, on July 6, 2018, the first round of tariffs officially took effect. The U.S. imposed a 25% tariff on $34 billion worth of Chinese goods. China would immediately retaliate with tariffs on an equivalent amount of U.S. goods. This would mark the beginning of a trade war between the two nations. On August 23rd, 2018, a second round of tariffs was implemented. That would affect an additional $16 billion worth of Chinese imports. China once again responded with reciprocal tariffs. On September 24th, 2018, the U.S. imposed tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods. These would start at a 10% rate with a plan to increase to 25% by January 1st of 2019. Although the increase was postponed, China still retaliated with tariffs on $60 billion worth of U.S. goods. On May 10th, 2019, the increase in tariffs on the $200 billion finally increased from 10% to 25% after trade negotiations stalled. These tariffs were part of the Trump administration's strategy to address the U.S. trade deficit with China and to push back against practices they deemed unfair, such as intellectual property theft and forced technology transfers. The trade tensions led to several rounds of negotiations, but also caused uncertainty in global markets. Now, you may recall more recently hearing Trump saying things that he's going to impose more tariffs on China, Canada, and Mexico. And most recently, he's saying that he's going to impose these tariffs specifically on these countries, but now it's being spun as, a way to combat fentanyl coming into the country and a way to combat illegal immigration. The problem with this whole narrative is that it's false. It's not really what's happening. Although the agenda may be to stop fentanyl and illegal immigration, the tariffs aren't actually being imposed on the countries being named. The tariffs are actually being paid by business owners inside the United States like myself. So I've been doing business in China specifically for well over 20 years, somewhere in the range of 25 to 28 years. I've been manufacturing and importing goods in China for that long. So since 2018, when these tariffs got imposed, I've been paying these fees directly to our government. So there are no tariffs or penalties specifically being placed on these countries. they're really trying to discourage American businesses from doing business with these countries. They're hoping that by putting these tariffs in place, that will force U.S. businesses to go find manufacturing sources that are outside of these countries and really put the pinch on these countries' economies by doing so. The problem with that is that it's far too expensive to manufacture products in the United States, for example. So, I'm a tattoo supplier. I manufacture a lot of goods in China. It's just very, very hard to bring that manufacturing out of China and move it into the United States because the cost of materials is too high here. The cost of labor is too high here. The average price of a box of needles right now in the U.S. marketplace, let's just say, is somewhere around an average of $20 a box. If I were to move that manufacturing out of China and bring it into the United States, I would have to start charging anywhere between $50 to $60, maybe even more, depending on the quality of the needle, for that same box of needles. That would be impossible to do business that way because consumers in today's market want everything cheap. It's all price driven, and the landscape in the marketplace here in the United States is extremely competitive and aggressive, especially when you're trying to compete against big brands like Amazon, which is a completely China-dominated marketplace. I mean, 90% of the things that you're buying on Amazon are Chinese products. But the point is that it's really hard to be competitive in the United States market when there's so many other people on a big scale, billion-dollar businesses supporting China businesses and selling China goods. Small business owners like myself have no choice but to go to China and manufacture our goods in an effort to stay competitive. We've looked at bringing our manufacturing back to the United States, and it's just not feasible. Let me show you a recent invoice that I got from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and I'll show you the actual tariffs that I'm personally paying. These aren't being paid by China. These aren't, I order stuff from China, they export. When it gets to the border, I get a bill for the duties that are owed. That bill doesn't go to China. It doesn't go to Mexico. It doesn't go to Canada. It comes straight to me, and the border, the Homeland Security will hold my goods hostage until I pay that bill. They don't get released. And if I don't pay that bill, I start getting charged really exorbitant storage fees every single day that I don't pay that bill. So I have to pay that bill as quick as I can, get my goods out of their control and get them to myself so I can hopefully sell them and recuperate that money. And I'm not been passing that cost on to my consumers because I have to stay competitive in the marketplace. I can't mark my needles up to $40 a box. I would never be able to sell them. So here you can see an actual invoice that I got from the Department of Homeland Security. This is from a shipment that I brought in on September 22nd of 2024. I imported tattoo needles, tattoo armrests, and rubber grips, and the invoice amount was $161,039. Now I'll come down to the next page here. You can see my tariff rates. 25% on the tattoo needles, article of China. 25% on my tattoo armrests, article of China. These were the tariffs on both of those line items, which made a grand total payable to the United States government, $45,866.67. So this is exactly what I paid to U.S. Department Homeland Security. Now, where does that money go? Let's talk about it. So from what I've been able to find on the internet related to tariffs collected by the U.S. government, I've been able to track it basically since its inception in 2018 up until October of 2023. I haven't been able to find any information after that. But up till October of 2023, I found out that the U.S. government's collected over $100 billion in tariffs from U.S. businesses on imports specifically from China. So where is that money going? That money is collected by Customs and Border Protection, like I just showed you on the invoice that I had. But once collected, those funds are transferred to the U.S. Treasury's General Fund. The General Fund is used to finance a wide array of federal government activities, which are including, but not limited to, public services like education, healthcare programs, and infrastructure projects, defense spending like military expenses and national security initiatives, debt servicing like paying the interest on the national debt, and other federal programs like social services, research grants, and environmental protection efforts. While the total amount of tariff revenue collected is publicly reported and trackable in aggregate, the specific allocation of these funds within the federal budget is not itemized based on their source. So once the funds enter the general fund, they're pooled in with other sources of federal revenue, such as income taxes and corporate taxes. The money is then appropriated by Congress through the federal budgeting process to various government programs and obligations. While the federal budget is publicly available, it does not specify how each dollar from tariff revenue is spent. But one thing is certain, the governments that the tariffs are being imposed on are not really the ones paying the tariffs. The people paying the tariffs are business owners like myself doing business inside the United States. We're basically being penalized for doing business with the countries that the United States is in a trade war with. So how do we get out of the middle of the trade wars between our government and other governments and still be able to be successful business owners within the United States? It would seem to me that the government would be more proactive in trying to support United States businesses. You know it's not possible for us to bring manufacturing out of these countries in a lot of cases, and you know it's too expensive for us to manufacture here. So why would you penalize us when we're already doing our due diligence as business owners in the United States? We're already paying exorbitant amounts of taxes. We're already supporting the economy. We're still creating jobs within the United States economy. We're doing everything that we can to be successful business owners and do right by the U.S. government, but we're still being penalized for the trade wars that are going on between our government and other governments outside of ours. What politicians are spinning to us is absolutely false. This is having a drastic, severe impact on U.S. companies. I'm sure if you walk around any big city in the United States, you can testify that there are several empty storefronts in your town. I see it everywhere I travel. All the big cities especially, Pittsburgh, Miami, Chicago. Every time I walk down the streets in these cities and others, there's just a ton of empty storefronts and businesses that are no longer there. The reasons why could be related to tariffs, could be related to other things outside of tariffs. But the real fact is that since COVID and the Biden administration, and really even before that, when these tariffs went in place, businesses have taken a major hit financially because the cost of business has gone up so high. Myself, I have not passed these tariffs on to my consumers because, like I said, I can't. I can't do that and still expect to sell products. So it's really tough for me to be in business today faced with these rising costs. And it's really sad that our government and the politicians on TV are spinning this narrative in a way that's really false, and they're not being transparent with these tariffs and what they're really used for and who's really actually paying them. So I would encourage other business owners like myself to make videos, let your voice be heard, show how these tariffs are affecting your business, and maybe they've even put your business out. If that's the case, definitely you should make a video and show some transparency. This message needs to go viral, Every American needs to know how the businesses are being impacted in the United States. And sure, there's a big controversy around this. There's a lot of people that don't support doing business in China. Myself, I've been doing business in China, like I said, for over 20 years. I'm a big supporter of global trade. I don't believe in isolating my businesses to inside the borders of this country. I feel like the world runs a lot better when every country is cooperating to create products and keep the economy stimulated and to keep the cost overall lower on everything. Please go out, make some videos, let your voice be heard, get in the ears of the media, the politicians. Just let everybody know that this is not okay. It's not okay to be killing businesses with political agendas, We're all trying to make a living and keep our families fed and live the American dream. And unfortunately, in more cases than not, the American dream is really just a nightmare. If you like my content, please like this video, subscribe. It helps me grow my following. It helps more people see my videos. And I want to keep posting more educational content like this to help spread the truth about what's going on in the world, what's going on in the economy, what's going on in the global economy, and more or less what's going on in my particular industry.